Okay, Chaz, let's get right to it. The Reds already had their terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day earlier this season, but then they get to Atlanta and lose Tyler Callahan, Noelvi Marte, Hunter Greene, and there was at least some concern about Jake Fraley, not to mention they lost some excruciating games. But since we're glass half full kind of guys, since Power Stacks is the show that rises above all the knee jerk reactions and doomsday scenarios people predict before we even get to Mother's Day, let's start this show Scott Van Pelt style and start with the best thing you saw from the Reds in the last few days.
I would like to do my part to give Tony Santillan the credit and the respect, and probably the appreciation is a word that he deserves. And we'll talk about what he has done this year, but just go back to the story. Moves to the bullpen as a rookie in 2021, lights out, nails the ERA during the second half of that season. 2022 opens the Reds year as the closer, just on a team that didn't win any games. And then he got hurt. He got banged up. He was out for 2 years. And he didn't get another chance until 2024. Great second half of last season, leveled up even further in 2025. And what he did on Tuesday and Wednesday, I mean, that is some standout reliever stuff.
Back-to-back appearances, no margin for error in those games. And he went in the first one, he went a couple of innings for the first time this season, threw the most pitches he'd thrown in an appearance this season, came back the next day and was just as good. So Tony Santillan, yes. Austin Wynns doesn't play, hardly plays for a week and a half, almost wins a game for the Reds coming off the bench and plays first base. Hadn't really sniffed much of first base in his career, said, sure, I'll play. He continues to hit. And then you know that I'm Team Espinal. If you're watching the YouTube show, you can see here that we're Team Espinal all the
I
way,
think
all
everybody
day long.
I think everybody's Team Espinal. Like, I think, and that's great. Awesome. Pad, be the Espinal guy. Great. I don't think there's a more universally, I'm not even going to say universally liked. I'm going to say universally not disliked Reds player than Santiago Espinal. Everyone just, really appreciates the guy.
You appreciate the way that he plays and invaluable so far for the Reds. Now don't you feel better? Don't we both feel better to start like that?
I feel great. I feel great.
Okay. Okay. You always feel great, but you also pointed out to me previously that you don't really have moods. So that's hard to
And it's
gauge
also
for
true.
you. Yeah, it's
That
hard
is
to
also
gauge
true.
Chaz sometimes. I feel better. I hope we all feel better having started the show that way. So welcome into Power Stacks with Gies and Slaw and Goldsmith, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. And here it is, Chaz. It's time to cue the dramatic music tease. As I say, coming up on this edition of Power Stacks, we've got the hot and cold, on and off, up and down the Reds lineup. Matt McLain, though, for one, offers no excuses in a conversation with Chaz. Also, men in tights. Terry Francona on function versus fashion in the Reds dugout.
That's a good slug right there, as we
You
call
like
it.
that one? All right, good slug, good story on the way. And news segment, this is going to be fun. Rate the road trip. Chaz spent a few days this week in the dirty, dirty South. So he opens his travel journal to share some of his experiences and keen observations from the fine city of Atlanta. That's all on the way. But let's start with this, the lead. All right, Chaz, baseball, the entire season, 6 months, it's ups and downs. It's peaks and valleys. And my partner on the pregame show, Sam LaCure, likes to say the goal every day is to minimize the down stretches. They're going to happen. The goal is to minimize those down stretches and then maximize the good stretches. So given the injuries, some of which I just described, some of the other injuries and the things that have happened to this team, what is the state of the Reds lineup right now and the options available for Terry Francona?
Well, let's just start with the even strongest nine that the Reds could possibly put out there and have been putting out there, because even when this team and this lineup has been at full strength, its defining characteristic has been its inconsistency. 9 runs for a few games, or you go like 9-6-6, and then you go 1-0-1, and that's kind of been a theme for 3 game pockets over the last several weeks. And so it's funny, like, how do you address that? How do you fix that? Because they're clearly making adjustments, because then after they score 1 run for a couple days, they score 7 runs for a couple days. How do you keep that clean and as steady as possible? And out on top of the fact now the injury situations that the Reds are dealing with, the fact that their depth is being tested, the new pieces in the lineup that they weren't expecting to be in such prominent roles. It kind of makes it hard to really get your feet under you as an offense when you put all that together. I thought this was really interesting insight. You're going to hear from Reds hitting coach Chris Valleca on the Reds lineup trying to find its identity.
And hot, cold, it's a long season. Guys are gonna not be perfect all the time. So just try to ride the stretches when they're good, and when it's not, make the necessary adjustments.
You feel the team's kind of clicking here, developing its identity almost offensively?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's always going to be a work in progress, especially in year one, as we're getting to know each other still, and work through the first struggles that guys have, and how we manage that. But I think we're doing a good job. We're stealing bases. I think we're doing a lot better job controlling the strike zone. Putting pressure on teams. I'd like to see us utilize the bunt a little bit more and just continue to put pressure on teams. But I do think, the way we've been with our situation of hitting has definitely improved. And I think that's going to start to become more of a hallmark, as more of the damage comes along.
Can you explain more the idea of maybe bunting here?
Yeah, I just think with how much team speed we have, you bring in the corners, it opens up more holes and opens up more opportunities for hits, that might not be hit perfectly or don't get in the air. I think it's also something that, with the identity of this club, that if we can fight for second base, we got to find opportunities to do it, or, whatever the mark beat of the game is telling us that, if that guy's playing back, or we need to get that guy, over to third base or something like that, is just going to give us more opportunities to swat our eyes.
I think you're going to see two halves of the Reds lineup now. I think you're going to see, for lack of a better word, the stars. And I know they're not all stars, but your Gavin Luxes, your Ellies, your McLains, etc., showing some more power. And they're all, Steer, I've talked to them all about trying to be more aggressive. Stevenson, that's where their mindset's at. But then the flip side of that lineup, Espinal, Dunn and Hurtubise, if they're in there, Trevino, the group I'm talking about, those guys are going to be trying to lean even further into contact and small ball, is the idea is the vibe I'm sensing, as the Reds try to figure out what to do on the nights where they can't seem to scratch together runs.
Talking about small ball, I talked to Valleca also pretty recently, and he said, I said, can you sum it up? Is there a mission statement for the identity that you're trying to impart to the group? And he said, posted in our cage is the phrase or the words, create chaos. We've heard that from TJ Friedel before, but if you have guys who can get a bunt down for a base hit from time to time, if you have guys who can, as he said, get the second base and put pressure, you can create chaos. I think that's obviously where they're going. And the other thing he said to me that I thought was interesting is he said he's also preaching early this season, don't be a victim of Great American Ballpark. You don't necessarily have to hit it in the seats to have success at Great American Ballpark. And you had that conversation with TJ Friedel earlier where he said, I like the fact that we're not dependent on the home run. Ironically, it was Friedel in game 3 of the series against the Braves who proved certainly that you don't have to have the home run, but you mix in a couple here and there, and it certainly helps a team, especially a team that was struggling to score the way the Reds have been recently, because going back to those numbers that you talked about, the harsh reality about this lineup right now is that since that rainout at Great American Ballpark, they had an 8-game stretch scoring 1 run or no runs. And that's what you referenced earlier. I still believe that this team can outpitch some of its offensive shortcomings, but they've had some tough nights. And so in terms of the ups and the downs, the Reds lineup and the Reds offense needs to maximize or stretch out a few more of those hot stretches that they've had early in this season. Specifically about the Reds lineup, the best news about Matt McLain, hands down, is that Matt McLain is healthy. Matt McLain is playing every day, but he missed a full season of baseball last year. And, he didn't have success for a stretch as he's improving, but missing a full season and struggling to be the player that he's been in the past, he probably hasn't dealt with this much previously in his baseball career. You talked to him. How did he address where he is right now and what he is or isn't battling to try to get back on top?
Well, my favorite anecdote is on, I believe, Tuesday in Atlanta. Terry Francona walks up to him and he goes, to McLain, tough stretch, huh? And McLain goes, yeah. And Francona says, try for 9 years. And that, of course, was Francona's career. Um, McLain has never struggled before this year, and that makes this, a different type of experience for him. I sense confidence, and you don't always feel that. And you'll hear from that when we hear from him in a second. But he is squaring the ball up. He is making hard contact. He is seeing the ball well. He's just missing pitches to hit. And he has to be more aggressive early in counts when he gets his pitch, and he needs to be more selective in 2-strike counts to kind of cut down on the strikeouts. He said it sounds simple, but that's how hard this game is. And all right, so here we're going to hear from Matt McLain. He says no rust. He talks about what he needs to do.
No, I mean, I honestly don't even know my numbers in spring. I know it's spring training, but I felt like I was on. To begin the year, I was on, and then when I kind of came off the IL, I think that's when it started. So to say that it's rust, I don't think that's what, from not playing here, it's not that.
What have you kind of been looking at?
Ever since I came off, I've just been a little rushed in my swing, not swinging at my pitches. So I got to get back to that. Slow the game down and keep working. It's baseball. It's gonna come. Got to cut down on the strikeouts, but when I hit it, I'm hitting it hard. It's kind of getting unlucky sometimes, combined with not taking great at bats. So it's not a good combination. Yeah.
Is there a part of your at bat that, like, some people say, like the first pitch or 2 strikes, or is there any segment of the at bat that you're focused most on? Or
No, just kind of all aspects. Be a little more aggressive early, then be more patient late. I think when you combine those two things, you get a really good hitter. But obviously, it'll be a challenge to do that. From now until the rest of my career, hitting not easy, but it's fun.
hitting's not easy, but it's fun. And you've got to be a little more aggressive. And it's funny, and I wrote about this a couple days ago. See if you can spot the theme that each individual hitter is focused on. TJ Friedel, quote, I feel like for me, continuing to be aggressive, I have to be in attack mode and let the rest take care of itself. Ellie De La Cruz, quote, we've got to be aggressive. Look for your pitch aggressively. Steer, quote, maybe cut down on the swing and miss a bit and not miss the good pitches. The one thing I've noticed is not fouling off the good pitches. So you're seeing the same theme for the Reds' best hitters. They've got to be more aggressive and do more damage when the opponent makes a mistake.
As we've talked about the injuries, and some of the ones we mentioned off the top just join the list that already existed. Christian Encarnacion Strand, Jamer Candelario, Austin Hayes has been out. You've addressed on Charlie's chalkboard depth, and Major League Baseball or professional sports in general, you focus on stars. And yes, stars win games. Stars matter. But you keep a detailed depth chart on your laptop for a reason, because depth matters. And right now, the Reds' depth is not only being tested, I think it's being questioned. Is that fair?
It's funny, why I follow the Reds minor league system as closely as I do is for moments like this where the Reds need help. All right, who are the options and what are their track records and what can you expect? Should they call up Ivan Johnson? I can guarantee you that's the first time Ivan Johnson's name has been brought up on a Reds podcast, but that's where the Reds are at. I've been following Ivan's career for a while, so I'm familiar with his game. But yes, the depth specifically, like the Reds had a run of drafts in the late 2010s, 2019, post first round specifically. They've done a terrific job, aside from the Nick Senzel draft for the most part, of making the most of their first selection, and I guess Austin Hendrick as well. But then post first round, in the late 2010s, the 2020 draft, the Reds know this, one of the worst drafts of all time, and it was COVID impacted, of course, but Hendrick's a backup. The second round pick got released. Third round pick got cut because of some off field stuff. The fourth round pick retired. The fifth round pick got traded, and they had a second round pick who also retired. Like, they got nothing from that class. The 2021 class, they did a solid job, but two of their comp picks, basically, first, back of the first round, were Jay Allen and Matt Nelson, who haven't panned out. And we're not going to go into a Reds drafting conversation, but where do you think this comes from? Another thing is they completely revamped their international scouting process in 2021 because it was the worst in the league. And they've got a nice group of kids coming. Most of them are in double A or lower, but they don't have that international, for the guy they acquired through international for agency, um, who's in triple A right now, who's ready to go. So this is when you need that, because this is how you build up. These are the boring, granular, nuanced, detailed conversations. Day 2 draft strategy, international free agent approach, minor league free agent approach, kind of with some older veterans. The Reds haven't done a good enough job of that in previous years, so now that kind of gets exposed. Louisville's roster's in a bad spot. Tito acknowledged it's not a perfect bench. The Reds will probably have to make at least, or they will have to make one move before Friday. But maybe it could be more as well because they need help in the infield.
Just be sure and keep your depth charts on your laptop handy. You're going to need them. Make sure they're handy. Make sure they're updated. Make sure they're accurate. And if anyone has any questions, Chaz has you covered. But the Reds' depth is being tested without question right now. We talked about hitting identity with Chris Valleca a few minutes ago. One thing we want to do to establish our Power Stacks identity, Chaz, is to let the listener or the viewer know that we're here for you, that Chaz is looking out for you. You should know that. And so with Mother's Day just around the corner, we got something for you. And this is going to be good. And it's from us to you, and the entire Growler podcast empire would like to share with you some Mother's Day ideas, because Chaz, you know that this is the big one. Mother's Day is huge.
Yes, it is. It is a big one. It is a big one. Correct.
All right. So we got the perfect Mother's Day gift for you that keeps on giving. It's a Mother's Day sale from Bar 3 Studio in Mariemont, and it's perfect. The Mother's Day Momentum Maker at Bar 3, that's 2 classes per week for 5 weeks. And write this down, Chaz, because there's a lot here that you're going to get. You're going to want to share this with some more folks. 2 classes per week at Bar 3 for 5 weeks. An initial and follow-up appointment with registered dietitian Maggie Huey of Pep Talk Nutrition with a before and after body composition scan to see the real results of your new routine. Mom also gets a 30-minute massage. Add all of this up, Chaz.
Brian, wait. This has got to be like $2,000-$3,000. I mean,
it's too good to be true. Am I right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This has got to be thousands of dollars.
Yeah, well, that's where you would be wrong, because all this for mom, for sister, for aunt, all of this, an $840 value, all for the price just of a 10-class package. And for loyal listeners and viewers of Power Stacks or any of the Growler Podcast Empire podcasts, it's only $349. Did you write that down?
$349. Real quick, I'm actually doing a Drake and Josh bit, but you didn't get that reference. But that is what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, if you do another Drake and Josh bit at any time, I'm not going to get it because I don't know who Drake and Josh are. But I do know that $349 for an $840 value at Bar 3 Studio in Mariemont is outstanding. So get to those folks. Set mom up at Bar 3 Studio in Mariemont. You can email them, Mariemont@bar3.com. Mariemont@bar3.com. Get them set up. Get a deal, and when you do, please tell them that Chaz from Power Stacks highly recommended this offer and made everyone's Mother's Day wonderful.
I met Kelsey and Carrie at the Growler live show I guess that was a week ago. Great people, friends of the program. They've got a great thing going on. The way that you've seen all of this take off and the way you've seen kind of the community that they talk about when they go on with Paul's show is always great to hear about. That's always a fun segment. To close the loop on the Drake and Josh reference, and it's my second favorite episode of all time. In a very meta episode, there's a ripoff of a, quote, Gary Coleman grill. Gary Coleman is George Foreman. So it's funny that the whole bit is it's ripping off, but it's ripping off of something that's actually also real. And Drake and Josh end up selling the grills and making a lot of money, but then they get framed for stealing the grills and they go to prison. And as Josh says, I've heard about prison. It ain't fun. But then they get their comeuppance thanks to their little sister. It's my second favorite episode of all time for Drake and Josh. But more importantly, our friends saving your Mother's Day plans. And sounds like a great deal.
Did you say Gary Coleman?
Gary Coleman Grills, yes.
Do you know who Gary Coleman is?
No.
Okay.
Is,
Again. We're going to have to do that another time. I'm going to let that stand.
All right. So Gary Coleman actually made an appearance in the episode. Now that I look him up, yes, this is the guy who came in at the end. But it was the George Foreman grill, right? Like they ripped
Are
up
you
that.
familiar with the show Different Strokes?
I'm not, but I just looked him up, and no offense,
Gary
I recognize him from this Drake and Josh episode. He made a cameo at the end.
Okay. Another time for Different Strokes and Gary Coleman, for sure. Back to baseball. A team looks to its ace to be the stopper. And Hunter Greene shows up in the Braves series after the Reds have dropped the first 2 games of that series. And everybody in the clubhouse is looking at Hunter Greene going in game 3. He's going to be our stopper. And that's another step, I think, in the evolution of Hunter Greene, which we've discussed before, is not only does his team look to him to be that guy, I think more than anything, Hunter Greene now wants to be that guy, expects to be that guy. And as he made that start against the Braves, in the time that he was out there, he was as good or even more dominant than he was against Washington when he had the 12 strikeouts in the previous start. Then the injury happened. But what did you take from Greene when you spoke to him after that game about not only kind of where he is and how he's viewed by this team, but certainly the injury that we don't have all of the details on just yet?
You're just the quick kind of nuts and bolts of that. Greene's getting an MRI. We're recording this on Thursday morning. We'll learn more about that later today. But it seemed like the vibe last night was that definitely Greene avoided something, a major scare. But again, we'll wait till we get more information. What Greene spent the most time talking about was 2 things. Was one, he said most pitchers focus too much on their upper extremities from a training and rehab perspective. He said he has done a very good job, or at least in his opinion, of building up kind of the lower half of his body. He hasn't really had lower half issues. He had the hip back stiffness, which was different. He had I think he had like some elbow tightness or something a couple of years ago, something minor that he came back from. So or I guess he had the elbow swelling last year as well, but the lower half has typically been strong, and that's something that he's encouraged about. That hasn't been a problem for him before. The second thing was he was very adamant. No, there was no correlation between throwing 114 pitches in his previous start and what he did and the tweak he suffered on Wednesday.
Excellent, because the Reds, my takeaway as we watched that was, hopefully, if that was the first time that he noticed the grab, as he described it, when he was throwing warm-up pitches, hopefully that's better than had he been mid-inning, max effort, and something happens then. You never know with something like that with a groin, but hopefully for the Reds, it's a short-term thing for Hunter Greene. We're going to move on now to something about Tito. Before we get to Tito, though, a few shows ago, we discussed you, Chaz, your very professional approach to your workday wardrobe. Carefully planned collared shirts and quarter zips for your work days at Great American Ballpark and various ballparks around the country. And I appreciate that. That's, from your generation, for there to be that kind of care and concern for appearances, I applaud you for that. Part of the reason I can work with you. But if you're a big league manager,
I don't like this but. Oh, okay. Thank you.
No, the butt's not for you. If you're a big league manager, though, thinking about your workday wardrobe, the guesswork and the planning, a lot of it's off the table because, as you know, it's the one major sport where managers, coaches largely wear some variation of the same uniform that the players wear. This came up with Terry Francona, who's been in baseball his entire life. How did we get to this topic in Tito's Top 2 about Terry Francona's game day attire or sense of fashion?
He was telling the story about how he switched to number 77 because he liked his shower shoes. We've heard this story before, and then he just switched the 1 to a 7 on his shower shoes, and then he talked about his overall approach with stuff like that. And I said,
But the point
Tito,
there is you have a man who is more content with using the same shower shoes that he's used for years and years and years and years, would rather do that than purchase new shower shoes and
yes,
assign them a new number. That's the point of that story. So
an
shower
important
shoes.
piece of the lore. Um, so then I just made an offhand comment. I said, Tito, it seems like you found the hoodie and then the black kind of front with the red sleeve, long sleeve t-shirt. It seems like those are the two things you've really gravitated towards in your closet. And he did respond. And now we'll hear Terry Francona's response to me, getting out my notebook and asking about Terry Francona's fashion.
You know, I dress for comfort, obviously, not for style. I used to go back and forth with the league back when they had that edict where you had to wear your jersey. Because back in I still wear tights because of my circulation, but I used to wear tights like where you couldn't breathe. I'd wear them on the plane. I'd wear them. And I kind of told the guys, hey, man, I can't tuck one more thing in. I'm going to have a heart attack. And then finally they just quit caring. When Joe Torre took over, he was like, I am not going to argue with you.
He had some tough times a couple times over the years, but Joe Torre, who's got a lot of mutual respect for, took over that, I don't know, it's more than an administrative role, like the senior management role for kind of all that type of stuff in the league office, and that helped do a favor for Francona. I will say, I mean, and usually I'm not a mean guy, and I mean this in a nice way. My one question is, how do Francona's sweatshirt and long sleeve shirts that he wear, how do they already look like he's had them for 10 years? Like you say, oh yeah, that's an old shirt, but that can't be possible. Like that's my one question that I will not ask the man himself.
Yeah, that's probably good to stay away from that. But he did say, though, I can't tuck one more thing in, right? That was what he said?
Yes. Yes.
And we've all been there, right? Especially.
I hate tucking shirts in.
Yeah, it's tough. We've all been there. And Chaz, I'm just here to tell you, it just gets tougher the older you get to just tuck things in and be comfortable with how it looks when it's tightening anything over, the human form when it's not exactly flattering or what you want it to be. Tightening it in by tucking it in is not pretty. So
hey, let's use this second to compliment Francona for being in great shape with all the work.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's completely genuine.
Yeah, honestly, and if you've seen certainly some of the coverage of Pilates, and he's referenced that a number of times, that he's doing that he swims every day. There's no question. There's no question about, for a man that took this job with serious health concerns, that left baseball because of serious health concerns, has done a fantastic job of taking care of himself and taking care of his body. And here's to cheers to good health for Terry Francona the rest of the way and the rest of his time in baseball. But going back to Francona, the second part of Tito's Top 2 today, I heard multiple former big league ball players give not drastically different assessments, but different assessments of how the relay play in the second game of the Atlanta series came to be in the ninth inning when Stuart Fairchild tied the game against the Reds in the ninth. It was the relay play that involved Jake Fraley in right field, Matt McLain at second base, Spencer Steer at first, and then certainly the throw home was a touch late, and the Braves tied the game, won the game in extra innings. And again, so I don't know if there's a 100% clear answer for how that played out or how that should have played out, but what was your read talking to Francona?
Well, first of all, every team has different rules. Like the Reds' rule actually last year was get the ball to Ellie. And so you'd see Ellie out in shallow right field reeling. That was not the rule. Rules changed. So it's hard to say, oh, this is what they're supposed to do. That is what they're supposed to do. Because every team, even one team, can have a different approach with different coaches. The quote from Francona acknowledges the hesitation by McLain, but what Francona really stretched was the throw and the throw taking him to second, the throw taking McLain away from Steer, who would have been in position to communicate 4-4-4. There was a lot of focus on the throw, and that direct approach, I think, helps a lot of people get a better sense of what the Reds should be doing, what they're supposed to be doing. He didn't throw a player under the bus, but he acknowledged directly, hey, this is what we expected. And McLain, of course, said I was in the wrong spot. He has to be better there too. There were multiple factors at play, but Francona definitely kind of directly acknowledged, yes, something went wrong, which a lot of managers even don't do.
Yeah, no, we've come to know that already. You ask a question, you generally get an honest answer. I don't mean generally. You get an honest answer, but it's up to Terry Francona how deeply he wants to explore his answers or his reactions. But you're going to get something when you ask, and that play certainly came up. I was glad that you guys in Atlanta talked to McLain about that, and you have to give McLain credit for owning up, whether whatever the opinion or whatever within the walls of the clubhouse was said about how that play transpired, for McLain to own up to his part in that play. But that was part of that tough couple of first games for the Reds against the Braves. Now we come to the portion of the show, which I think this is going to be fun. We're going to do this at various times this season. Me will be on the road with the Reds, and so it makes all the sense in the world just to do a rate the road trip segment. So let's start this one with your time in Atlanta. Rate the road trip for me in this American city for which you have spent some time, and the ballpark, the food, whatever it is about your trip. What can you share from Charlie's travel journal from this stint, as I said off the top, in the dirty, dirty South?
This is a straight 9, and I think the first thing to stress would be I'm not in Atlanta. I mean, I guess technically Cobb County, it's about 30-40 minutes out. It's very much its own isolated thing, kind of nestled inside or between the highways. I kind of call it like a college town in terms of how dense, and I guess dense is the perfect word, with restaurants, with places to go to, with entertainment, with the fudge place down the street. So you go for a walk, you go to a different restaurant every day. It's very good walking. You're right at the stadium. I'm saying about a 5-minute walk from the ballpark, which for me is the top piece of criteria that I prioritize when I'm looking where. Of course. And then you have, it's not like, obviously it's a new area, so it's not like a mom and pop have had this Italian place for decades, but there's a nice Italian place, and it's not a chain, it's an authentic thing. Now, it doesn't necessarily have the mystique, might be the wrong word, the oldness, the ambiance. It is new. It is kind of clean, not cleaner. It is kind of like not off-brand, but almost kind of off-brand because it is so new. If you know what I'm saying. It was like, we want an Italian restaurant here, and it's almost reverse engineered, as opposed to having an Italian restaurant that kind of embeds itself in the city. But hey, all the food's good. There's a good Asian place I like. Again, the fudge place down the street, great walking, beautiful ballpark, very beautiful ballpark.
I was going to ask
give
you,
this trip a straight 9.
Okay, but you like, from your working perspective, is Truist Park to your liking?
The biggest plus is the elevator takes you straight to the visiting clubhouse, so that's always nice. Now, you do have to cut through some of the fans, which that's fine, but the problem is the fans, you're kind of going against the current when you go against the fans in the neck. So that's never fun. But visiting clubhouse, very amenable, solid place for us to stand. The manager's office is a little on the smaller end, so it's crowded, and I'm not complaining about that. I'm just laying out the scene. Press box food, it's not a good press box food setup, but hey, I'm having a good time.
All right, I like to think about you being in the South, since I'm from the South and you're not from the South. So did you get any sense of Southern hospitality at any point?
Yeah. Well,
Are the people friendlier?
People are very friendly. This doesn't feel like the South. Like, it almost feels like Indianapolis or, something like that, because I'm not in Atlanta. I'm in this own pop-up out of, it's almost like Reds Fest. It's like, how Reds Fest is kind of like a small city. That's what this is. And I love Reds Fest. Yeah. That's what this is like.
All right. So Atlanta gets a 9. Truist Park gets a 9 from Chaz. We'll We'll put that down in the log for the first edition of Rate the Road Trip for Chaz's time in Atlanta. The Reds will move on now to Houston, staying in the South, the Southeast, the Gulf Coast, H-Town, Clutch City, all those things in the motherland for Geese, the Lone Star State. So they move on to Houston. Let's talk briefly about the Astros. The Astros, at the moment, kind of like the Reds, right around 500. It's one of the brands in baseball the last however many years, certainly, as this road trip is filled with two of those teams, with Atlanta and Houston. When they get to Houston, they're going to miss Framber Valdez in terms of starting pitching for Houston. They will see righty Hunter Brown, though, I believe, in game one. Brown right now currently number 2 on the starting pitching power rankings with his 1.67 ERA. It doesn't matter who the Reds are playing right now. They need to try to find some consistency and win. But what about the matchup as they move on to Houston?
I'll start tonight in Atlanta facing Spencer Schwellenbach, one of the most, just one of the best pitchers in the NL. And then they're facing Hunter Brown, one of the best pitchers in the AL. And then they face Lance McCullers, who's coming off an injury. But I'm going to look at this 2-game stretch. And I know this isn't technically a look ahead to the Astros series, and this might be outdated by the time you listen to this, but the Reds...
I'll allow you some leeway. I'll allow you some runway here to do whatever you want to do.
The Reds are facing 2 elite starters. They've got to scratch together runs. We've got to see some of the inconsistency cut itself out and kind of have a plan against the best in the game. Guys who can throw a ton at you. And then if you get through Brown on Friday, all right, now you're in solid spot to go out and take a series. The other starting pitching matchups pretty much shake out the Reds' way. From what it looks like, you get Abbott on Sunday. I think we haven't talked enough about Abbott, too, in the season he's having. I'll make a mental note for our future podcasts. Alvarez is hurt. It's kind of like the Reds, top-heavy lineup with some holds or questions at the bottom that they've got to prove. And the Reds need to start stacking some wins, so let's see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, glad you mentioned that. There is a Yordan Alvarez-sized hole in the Astros lineup, at least for while the Reds are in town. So from the Reds' perspective, that's good. Better health to Alvarez moving down the line. We already offered one gift idea in the show. Chaz, you got one more, right?
One note here that we wanted to drop in. Hey, Reds fans, here's something you don't want to miss. It's the 50th anniversary of the Big Red Machine, one of the most dominant dynasties baseball has ever seen. And to celebrate, Nyko Sports is releasing a limited edition, officially licensed, full-size collectible bat honoring Cincinnati's 1970s legendary team. Only 1,975 bats of these 975 of these bats will be made. That's it. Each one individually numbered, packed with stats and details from the era that gave us Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, and Tony Perez, the legends who redefined baseball and brought home the 1975 and 1976 World Series titles. These bats are museum quality, built to last, and they're the kind of piece you'll proudly display in your collections for generations to come. So don't wait. Head to NIKOsports.com. That's NIKCO Sports.com and use the promo code Charlie at checkout to save $10. Again, act fast with only 1975 bats available. These bats are disappearing quick, and once they're gone for good. NIKOsports.com. Own a piece of Cincinnati Reds history today. And leave a comment about how you thought my ad read was.
Hey, we all have bats. Memorabilia is fantastic, so check that out. It looks fantastic. It looks awesome. And I thought your ad read was, I thought it was solid. I'm going to ring the bell for your ad read.
I try to be good. Quick take. Zach Lowe, the GOAT of ad reads. That would be my I don't know if you listen to Zach Lowe's podcast.
I don't.
He's good.
He nails it. Okay. Well, maybe we should both.
He's a basketball guy.
We should check those out, and then hopefully we'll have more ad reads to practice with here on Power Stacks. We appreciate Bar 3 Mariemont, and we appreciate Nyko.com for their participation.
NIKOsports.com.
NIKOsports.com for their participation and support of Power Stacks, and we invite you to do the same. Also, share with a friend. Make more friends and share with a friend about Power Stacks, and if you enjoyed this, rate and review, and check it out on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. Chaz, final thought?
I was going to do more about the Drake and Josh episode, but I've decided that you guys have probably had enough.
had enough. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you next time.